All right, so we're going to spend one more day on solving trig equations. These are going to have a little extra thing we have to worry about. But before we do, we're going to go through and write down in the margin all the things we need to know. So we need to know the fingers for the hand trig. We need to know the rules for the hand trig. We need to know the quadrant angles. All right, so that pi over 2 should be 0, 1. I wrote negative 1 for some reason. And then how we use the quadrant angles. Then we also need to know the fingers that are in different quadrants. So we'll start with pi over 6. And then pi over 4. And then pi over 3. And then finally, we need to know that all students take calculus. Okay. So by test day, you're going to need to be able to create all of that on your own. So I hope that you'll be able to. All right, so this is lesson 5.36. And we're going to be solving trig equations with multiple angles. All right. So I'm just going to start off with a basic one. That's not going to be an example, just one we work on. So we have sine of 2x equals negative 1. All right, so if that 2 wasn't there, we would just say x equals and then figure that out. But because there is a 2 there, now we're going to say 2x equals, and then we're going to figure it out. So for sine and cosine of negative 1, we go to the quadrant angles. The sine corresponds with the y, so we want a y coordinate of negative 1. So that's going to be the angle 3 pi over 2. All right. And then this one, on the ones we're going to do today, we're not going to be given an interval. So we have to add 2n pi to that. Okay, so this is what 2x is. To find what x is, we're just going to divide everything by 2. So when you take a half and divide it by 2, you get a fourth. And then that, instead of 2n pi, is just going to be n pi. All right, so same rules like the first day that we solved equations. The difference is now we have an extra step where we have to divide, or we may have to multiply depending on how it's set up. All right, so for example 1, we're going to find all solutions. So no interval means we have to do the plus n pi or the plus 2n pi. All right, so A, we have the cosecant of 2x minus 2 over the square root of 3 equals 0. All right, so we'll start off and just move that 2 over the square root of 3 over to the other side. All right, and then just like before, we don't have a trick for cosecant, so we'll just change it to the reciprocal. Now, the angle doesn't change. Like when we did this before, when it was just sine cosecant of x, we would do sine of x, not the sine of the reciprocal of x. So same thing. We just leave the angle alone, leave the 2x alone, and do the reciprocal as the sine and reciprocal the other side. Okay, and then for this one, we're doing the hand trick for sine is the square root of the bottom over 2. So we want 3 bottom fingers. If we're looking at the hand trick, 3 bottom fingers would be those 3, and the angle would be pi over 3. And we do plus 2n pi. But there is more because sine is also positive in quadrant 2. So that means we're going to go to the pi over 3 angle and also have the angle 2 pi over 3. All right. And so these are what 2x equals. So we're going to go through and divide every little thing by 2. All right. So when we divide a third by 2, we get a sixth. We can do 2 pi over 3 a different way if you want to. We can just go ahead and divide this 2 by 2 and get pi over 3. If you didn't want to do it that way, you could still do a sixth. It would be 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3. Okay. All right, and then one more example. We have the cotangent of x over 2 minus 1 equals 0. All right, so we'll go ahead and move that 1 over. All right, the cotangent of x over 2 is this, the reciprocal of that is the tangent of x over 2, and the reciprocal of 1 is just 1. Now, you are not going to get 1 for a tangent from the quadrant angles because you're dividing y divided by x. And so if you take those ordered pairs and divide the y by the x, you're never going to get 1. So this actually comes from the hand trick. So on the hand trick for tangent, you're dividing the number of bottom fingers, square root of the bottom, over the square root of the top fingers. And so the only way you can divide and get 1 is if it's the same number of bottom and top fingers. Okay, so over 2. All right, also let's talk about quadrants. Tangent is positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 3. Right, and then if we just take the one from quadrant 1 and add in pi to it, it does give you the one from quadrant 3. All right, so all we need to know is what finger has the same number of top fingers as bottom fingers, and that's going to be the middle finger. So we get the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, or just 1. So that's pi over 4 plus n pi. All right, so that takes care of quadrant 1 and 2, because if I took pi over 4, I added pi to it, that gives us our 5 pi over 4. So it takes care of both of those. All right, and then we're just going to need to multiply by 2. Okay, so when I multiply pi over 4 by 2, it gives me pi over 2. And then n pi times 2 is 2 n pi. All right, so that's trig equations with multiple angles. All right, so what I want you guys to do is on the review worksheet, the first 6 are for this lesson. All right, and then when you get done with this, just go ahead and just keep working on the review.